All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Well, now we're going to get started. Hi, so I'm Brandon Valentine from Homebrew. Some of you may have been in John Britton's talk a couple of days ago about our product. That is not this talk. If you are interested in the details of our product, you can watch his talk if you missed it. You can schedule a follow-up with me. I'd be happy to give you a one-on-one demo, talk about real scenarios in your fleet. But today I really want to talk about the technology that underlies Homebrew, which is Homebrew, the open source project. So I'm guessing if you're here, you've heard of it. Yeah, seeing a lot of nods. How many of you are a little bit scared of it? Huh? You know? All right, cool. Well, we're going to go in and talk in more detail about what exactly it is. But before I can do that, I kind of have to tell you who I am, because if I'm just some schmo, like, why are you going to listen to me and take advice from me? So I want to get that out of the way first. The first thing I want you to know is this is my first Mac Admins PSU. And I'm having a blast. I've met a lot of really cool people. And I'm super grateful to the organizers for allowing me to be here this morning, Friday at 9 a.m. I've had a lot of coffee already, so sorry if I'm a little high energy by the end of this. And I just have to tell you, I've been going to conferences all year. This is definitely the best one. So please come back next year. I know I will, whether I'm speaking or not. So who am I? I've played for both teams in my career. I was a system administrator for over a decade. I sort of went and worked for the enemy and became a software developer. And for the last 5 years, I've been sort of standing in the middle. 25 years ago, I was the skinny nerd over on the right there. Today, I look more like the old man on the left, who is an old friend of mine, John Hall from Digital Equipment. He's quite a character. He gave me permission to post that. So, I've been doing this a long time. I have seen IT problems from the perspective of trying to lock things down and control them and provide a secure and safe environment. And then I've also been the person working around all of those controls as a developer trying to get my job done. So I want to talk to you about how Homebrew fits into that picture. First of all, I have been, from the very beginning, a fan of open source package management. My return to the Homebrew world and to Homebrew is really a return to something. If you can see the date stamp up there, this is the oldest open source contribution of mine that I could find. This is from October of 2000. I'm sure that there are older ones there. I was actively contributing to things in the late 90s. And from the very beginning, my job as a system administrator meant that I always had more requests for software than I could keep up with. So I always sought out the quickest and easiest, safest, and most secure way to answer those requests, get myself out of the loop, and no longer be the bottleneck. So, this contribution, this is from like the old school Unix days. Those of you who have been Mac admins for a long time will recognize that OS X did not exist in October of 2000. So I was using other versions of Unix. But I still remember the day in 2001 when OS X was released. I got to try it out on a friend's Mac. I immediately went out and bought a PowerBook G4. This is like the very first time in my life that I could have a real Unix machine and take it with me. Prior to that, everything was a giant workstation, a full tower. It was a game changer for me. And I immediately got involved with open source package management. Still working as a sysadmin, still had the same problem to solve. Homebrew did not exist when this came out in 2001. So what did we have? We had Darwin ports. It's called Mac ports now, but when it first came out, Apple was not quite on it with the marketing, so they called it Darwin ports. And I immediately became a maintainer of Darwin ports. Fast forward, and one day I looked up, and the Ruby community came in like a freight train and just ran over Mac ports, created Homebrew, and the rest is history. So I myself, personally, around that time, became a software developer, and I stopped fighting the uphill battle of sticking with Darwin, now Mac ports, became a Homebrew user, and then very quickly, as has always been the case in my career, a contributor. So I tell you about this because I want you to know that I've been doing this for a while, but I also want you to know that the bar for contributing is very, very low. And everyone in this room has the capability to contribute to open source package management, and I'm going to try to convince you why you might want to. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the basics of Homebrew. I'm going to guess if you're in this room, some of this will not be a surprise to you, but I'm going to cover it anyway because it's relevant as we go through the rest of the presentation. So this is the story that you all know today. Homebrew. It's for developers, right? It's like how they get all their developer tools installed. It's primarily about open source things, and it is, at this point, an industry standard. Such an industry standard that like Apple cares about it. When Apple makes major changes to the Mac platform, they reach out privately to Homebrew and say, hey, this is coming. We want you to be ready on day one. So what can you do with it? Well, you can install your developer tools. It's very, very easy. You can upgrade your developer tools. But part of what I want to try to convince you of this morning is that this developer tool story is out of date. Homebrew is a volunteer project. They don't have a marketing department. And so you're looking at 15-year-old messaging about Homebrew. Homebrew is much, much more than that today. It's actually the #1 app store for everybody. So sure, open source, still a big part of it, but you can do this. Okay, Chrome, cool. You can also do this. There are so many commercial applications available in Homebrew today that no single package manager, sort of self-service app store on the Mac, nothing compares. It's not even in the same league. There's 15,000 things in Homebrew. And that's like a snapshot from a month ago. There's probably 15,500 things in Homebrew today. And it really is everything. It's all that developer stuff, but it's all the stuff that everyone in here is responsible for distributing out to the Macs in your fleet. So it's also insanely ubiquitous. So we know about 35 million devices running Homebrew, but those are just the ones that report in, that tell us that they're using Homebrew. And so we know that in organizations like the ones you all work in, you're probably blocking that. You're probably not letting those Homebrew installations check in. So I want to share this number because I think the impact of this number is that there's safety in numbers. One of the huge values with Homebrew and its ability to manage and install software is that it gets a lot of at-bats. If there are problems with a Homebrew package, they're found out and fixed so insanely quickly because across 35 million people, one of them is going to be annoyed enough to fix it. As I mentioned, it gets fixed all the time. And this is something that is really hard to quantify, but GitHub gives us some insights into it. This is just the last 30 days. 3,000 things were updated, patched, fixed in Homebrew in just the last 30 days. That is an insane amount of activity. If any one of you were tasked with 3,000 software package updates, well, you'd probably just go find a new job. Yet, through the power of the community, through the power of what people are doing together collaboratively, this is possible. So not only is there strength in numbers, but there's a ton of automation around Homebrew. So there is a thing called Brew Test Bot. You can go look in the Homebrew repositories. It will, every day, open about 50% of those 3,000 pull requests without a human ever being involved. So vendor releases new version, vendor releases patch. Brew Test Bot will just go find it, update the Homebrew formula, and notify humans, hey, someone come take a look at this. There's a new version. That is something that, I'm going to guess, in your own internal software packaging efforts is missing, right? That level of automation, you're going to react to what your users ask you for, what security asks you for, but Homebrew inverts that. It's proactive. It will bring the fix to you before you even know that you need it. So it's also incredibly consistent, and thanks to some recent work that Workbrew has helped to fund, it's very, very secure. And what do I mean by that? Well, I say it's consistent because unlike the sort of human error element of software packaging, you go, you read that README, it tells you need all these dependencies, you go get the dependencies, you run configure, you run make, you do all those things, you get a package at the end. Instead, Homebrew introduces configuration as code. So every version of every package is built the same way every time. So the support overhead of that package is much, much lower when you remove the human element, the human factor in how it was packaged, how it was distributed. And this can save you a lot of time, not only in the packaging part, but in the aftermath of the packaging part, where your users start using it, where they encounter bugs and problems, because we're all humans, we have a busy job to do, and we're not necessarily going to be free of errors all the time. Now, I said that it's secure, and this, I think, is something that we're doing a better job this year of telling the story of, but GitHub and Homebrew and Workbrew and Trail of Bits, if any of you know the security consulting firm Trail of Bits, we partnered this year to introduce package signatures to Homebrew. So this feature is not on by default. It's very easy to turn on. You set an environment variable, a config variable in Homebrew. GitHub will actually sign every package that comes out of a GitHub Actions runner that is built for Homebrew. If you turn this on in Homebrew, it will refuse to install packages that have not been signed by GitHub. And with that GitHub signature, GitHub can actually connect the binary that you download all the way back to the specific container that built it. It can link it back to the specific source code that was used to build it. GitHub will attest that that source code was not tampered with in any way. It will link it back to exactly how it was built, when it was built. And so this is a level of sort of security and confidence in the quality of that package that no other macOS package manager offers right now. I think maybe I'll give the caveat. The Mac App Store does a fantastic job with that, but how many of you can find 100% of what you need in the Mac App Store? Nope, not gonna happen, right? So you need a good option B, and I'm here to convince you that Homebrew is that option B. Yes?
So that's neat that binary things are hashed and signed and secure, what about packages that build from source?
It is the packages built from source that we're signing.
No, like I'm talking like Brew checks out the source code and your machine compiles it.
So in order for this to work, you do have to rely on Homebrew's bottled packages.
Okay, so that's tabs.
It is bottles, and that's, okay. If you want to talk more about this after the talk, I'd be happy to get into the weeds with you about it. There are some important details there, but
okay, so what you're describing does not affect, I'm checking out this source code and my machine is compiling this
correct.
package from the source code.
Correct. Apologies to the recording or anyone watching at home. I did not throw him a microphone. Hopefully you got the gist. So how many of you spend some part of your workday compiling software for the Mac, packaging things? All right. I would wager that everyone who just put their hand up has at some point packaged the exact same thing, but at a different company in a different environment. So that show of hands there, that was duplicated effort. That was all of us as Mac admins reinventing the wheel in our own little silos, in our own companies. And I'm here to convince you that there's a better way to do that. We can share our efforts. So, who here has heard the term lazy web? This is a software engineering term. It's highly technical, this software engineering term. What it refers to is the degree to which software developers will go out of their way to not do something. We are incredibly lazy, and I am one, and I can say that about us. In fact, if you have spent any quality time with a software developer, you've probably had the experience of, wow, he really just spent all day building something so that he doesn't have to do the thing I asked him to do, right? That is the origin of Homebrew. Homebrew is this idea that I only ever want to learn how to do something one time. Once I've learned how to do it, I want to codify it, and I want to never think about it again. So imagine if everyone who just put their hand up, let's say you all had to package OpenSSL. What if, doesn't matter you all work for different companies, all of you put down your hand except for one person, and that person packaged OpenSSL and just gave it to everyone else in the room. And not only did that, but did it in a way where you could all trust that person. Because they did it in the open, they shared the code with you, they got the package signed, and now it's something you can trust and something you can use. I'm very convicted that as Mac admins, we are missing an opportunity to collaborate here. On top of that, there are easily 10x more software engineers on the planet than there are IT admins of any flavor. You add up Windows admins, Mac admins, Linux admins, they're dwarfed by the software developer numbers. Imagine if we took our community and glued it together with the community of software developers, and we all started collaborating with one another from the get-go. So how would you get started using Homebrew in your organization? As I go through these, I'm going to see a lot of people want to put their hand up and tell me this security problem and that security problem. Those are later in the slides. We're going to get there. But here's how you would get started. So I believe that you should be the one to install Homebrew. And I'll bet that's not the way it is today in your organization. I'll bet for most of you, your developers are installing it. They probably open a ticket and ask for admin rights on their Mac if they don't have them already. And then they go to town. And you have no control over what they install, where they install it, whether they keep it up to date. I think if you are going to embrace Homebrew as a software distribution mechanism in your organization, it's super, super important that you know where it is and you put it there. We talked about how developers are lazy. If you put it there, they'll just use it. But now you own it and you control it, and that's an important distinction. So there's multiple ways to do this. There is actually an official Homebrew installer package. You can go get it from the Homebrew project, you can put it in your MDM, you can build a policy around it, and push it out to all of your Macs. It works well, it installs headlessly. It does have some dependencies. The Xcode command line tools are a prerequisite. There are some tricks to getting the Xcode command line tools installed via your MDM. We have published some blog posts and stuff around that. We also have some scripts that I'd be happy to share with you if you want to contact me after this, if that is a problem that you're trying to solve in your fleet. We, of course, have a Workbrew installer package as well. Now, I'm biased. I work at Workbrew. I work on the product sometimes too. I believe it's the best way to get Homebrew installed in your fleet. And I say that because out of the box, for free, we give you ways to lock Homebrew down. I'm going to talk about how you can do it yourself, and I'm happy for you to do it yourself, but hopefully you will concede that maybe everyone in this room reinventing that wheel is not a great use of your time either. So you've got Homebrew on the device. the next thing you're going to want to do is start installing things on the device. So you can, via your MDM, run some policies, run some scripts to install individual packages. Although Homebrew has an incredible feature called brew files, which you can see over on the right here. It's a declarative way to tell Homebrew what you want installed. This is just a text file, super easy to write. All I have to know is the name of the package in Homebrew. That's very easy to find. There's a website that will tell you that. The command line tool will tell you the name of the package. You can, through your MDM, push these things out to devices in your fleet. And then with this brew bundle command that you see here at the bottom of the slide, Homebrew will take care of installing everything in that list and all of its dependencies. That's it. Like, no packaging, no like uploading it into a portal somewhere that then you have to get the MDM to talk to, or you have to convince the user to go click a thing. Homebrew just does this, does it out of the box. It's getting better all the time in Homebrew as well, as people find new and interesting things to do with this technology. And I think that this looks a lot easier than what I've done in my career before to get software out into my fleet. So you can also trivially upgrade all that stuff. We talked about how active Homebrew is, how fast it's changing. A simple MDM policy that runs brew upgrade on a regular basis takes care of most of the problems that you have with security vulnerabilities, with developers and other people in your fleet asking for new versions of things. New version of something comes out, they need that feature that's in that new version, and now it's on your plate to package it and get it out to them. Or you just run brew upgrade. So there are some problems with Homebrew. It's not all rosy, and we're going to get into what they are, and I have some suggestions for what you can do about it. So out of the box, Homebrew is designed to be single player. You know, this is developers scratching their own itch. They are building something for themselves, and they really would prefer to keep it the way it is today. They would really prefer that you give them sudo and they do whatever the heck they want. So as an open source project, especially one run by volunteers, they're very unlikely to change this. This is the easiest thing to support. In fact, Homebrew itself, though you can open an issue and report a bug, the project doesn't provide support to its users. And so they have designed it in the way that they can see the lowest volume of incoming requests and issues. But that doesn't help you, it doesn't help me. You also, out of the box, like, you don't have any idea what's out there installed on devices because it doesn't do any reporting to anywhere other than GitHub. And GitHub is going to roll that up and aggregate it globally. That's not going to tell you anything about your organization. And by default, out of the box, there are no guardrails. You can do whatever the heck you want. We'll get into more specifics around that. So one of the other problems with it is that it's so darn successful and popular that malicious actors are targeting it. So I happen to have a customer who is a Big Four consulting company. You know, the people who come in and you pay them $1,000 an hour to give you advice. They fell for this. Their own $1,000 an hour consultants fell for a malware-infested Homebrew installer. So if they can do it, someone in your fleet is definitely going to do it at some point. And you probably won't know until the security team taps you on the shoulder and says, what's going on this endpoint? This is like a game of whack-a-mole at this point. These things pop up, people buy Google ads, we shut them down, and the next week they're back with a different name, with a different domain, and with a different Google account. So we've talked a little bit about taps, but I'm going into a little more detail. So, you know, a tap is fundamentally a Git repository. And that Git repository contains all of the build instructions for all the packages in Homebrew. So they're just text files, they tell you how to build stuff. But aside from the official ones, provided by Homebrew, anyone in this room can just create a Homebrew tap. That is intentional, it's an asset. If you have internal tools at your company that you need on every Mac in the fleet, that's super helpful. You can embrace all the benefits of Homebrew. All the configuration is code, all the CI. The CI is free and open source. You can put it on your own private tap. That brew test bot we were talking about, you can even enable that on your tap to warn you when, say, the development team that maintains that internal tool releases a new version. You'll gain all of that as a Homebrew user if you embrace it. But if you don't do some things to lock down Homebrew, you can literally run brew tap, give it any Git URL, and start installing third-party software. And I promise you, there are people out in your fleet today who they get to the end of a Stack Overflow post, and the question with the green check mark says, oh, you need to install this thing, add this Homebrew tap, install this package. And maybe when that answer was posted, it was genuine, it was legit, it was actually the answer to the question. But let's say that that person abandons that GitHub repo. Someone slides in, stands up their own private tap. They can start delivering malware to your device, and you won't know anything about it. So we got to do something about these things. So what can we do? So the first thing, I'm going to reiterate it because it's really important. You need to provide Homebrew. Don't send your users to Google to get Homebrew, because some percentage of them will fall for the Google ad, the malware hack. These domains, they're like one letter off from the official Homebrew domain. They're like so easy to fall for. They have valid SSL certificates. They look identical. Just remove the risk of that happening. If people in your fleet are going to use it, you should own it. So you can also configure Homebrew. So there's this etc homebrew brew.env file that you can put on your devices. Homebrew will look for and read this file, even if the person running Homebrew doesn't own the file. And that's an important distinction, because you all have ways to put files on devices that are owned by root, can't be edited by the end user. And so you can put things in this file that govern the behavior of Homebrew. Some of the important ones: allowed taps here at the bottom. If you set up an allowed taps policy in Homebrew, that massive security hole that we just talked about goes away. Nobody will be able to run the brew tap command at all. If they want to ingest third-party software that's not from the official Homebrew project, they're going to have to come talk to you about it. You can also ban software, so this forbidden formula and forbidden casks API that exists in Homebrew. This is something that we implemented actually at Workbrew. We gave it away. We gave it to everyone in the open source community because we believe it's that useful and that important. And a lot of our policy engine in Workbrew is built on top of it. There's nothing stopping you today from just pushing those policies out to the device yourself via your MDM. And you don't have to become a Workbrew customer. I'd love it if you did. But if you're going to be running Homebrew in your fleet, please do lock it down. Like, I'm giving you everything you need to know to do that. So I've also sort of learned some lessons through managing fleets over the years that I think are relevant to Homebrew. I want to share them with you. One is that if you think that you've taken Homebrew away from people, I promise you, you have not. It might be a corporate policy that it's not allowed to be installed. It might be that you go out and uninstall it via your MDM, but developers will get it on their machine. They will figure it out if you take it away. So you're much better off leaning into it, embracing it, owning it, configuring it for them so that they don't do the wrong things with it. Because again, we're lazy. Give us the easy way to do it, we'll do it. And I think that is a nice segue into the next point here. This is not just a Homebrew opinion. This is my number one saying as a sysadmin. This is what I would tell my teams when I managed them. The right way to solve any problem in IT is to make the thing that you want the user to do the easiest possible thing they could do. That applies to Homebrew, it applies to so many other things in our job. People don't really want to fight with their tools, so if you give them an easy way to do something, they tend to just follow suit. And then I also want you to understand that there is a tremendous amount of power in consistency. So in the macOS world, there's not a lot of consistency around app installations. Some of them come as a DMG, a zip file, an installer package, an app store package, and where they get installed and what kind of receipt you have for what's been installed varies wildly, and in some cases, like the DMG and the zip file, who knows? It's just an app bundle that gets dropped somewhere on the disk, right? So with Homebrew, even when you're installing those things that are commercial software that come as a DMG or as a package file, if you wrap them in Homebrew, you get a receipt. And the receipt is in the same place every time on every machine. The software is installed in the same place on every machine. Let's say that security comes to you and they say, we want to know exactly what versions of OpenSSL are on all of our devices. If you're using Homebrew to install and manage things, that is a trivial question to answer. If you're not, maybe not so easy. So let's talk a little bit more about developers finding a way. It took me about 10 seconds to find this. It's literally on the first page of Google. These are instructions that work for installing Homebrew without sudo in your home directory in a place that IT is unlikely to be able to find it. So I can call the directory whatever I want. I can install it in my documents folder. Doesn't matter. And I tested these instructions. They work. I took sudo away from myself. Boom, I had Homebrew in my home directory 5 minutes later. So again, if you put up these gates to using Homebrew, you're going to end up in a much worse situation than just owning it, embracing it, not being scared of it, and giving folks a way to play nice with IT and security. I have a vivid memory of, it's about 10 years ago now, I did a consulting gig at a major Fortune 500. I go in, I'm doing programming at this point, I'm doing software development. And they had a little experimental team going to build their first ever JavaScript web app. So I go in, I join the team, I talk to the manager, I'm like, hey, I'm trying to stand up your app so I can work on it, and everything's blocked, corporate firewall. I can't npm install anything, I can't get all the software I need, and he goes, oh yeah, don't worry about that. Do you see that SSID that says Comcast Xfinity? Just switch over to the Comcast SSID, install all your stuff, and then get back on our network. Right? Nightmare. It's okay, consulting conclusion number 1. Fix that. So I share that story to share just how trivial it is for people to go around the gate that you put up. It's better to just let them walk right in. So again, making the right thing the easy thing. Everyone loves it when their job gets a little easier. Most people, especially software developers, have issues with authority. They don't like security controls. They don't like being told what they can't do. But they do love it when you make their life easier. So again, provide an easy button. Just manage it, give it to them, and make them feel heard by the IT team. And then, I want to reiterate, consistency is super powerful. There's been a lot of talk in the software development world lately about a software bill of materials. How many of you have heard that phrase or read anything about it? Imagine having that for your Mac fleet. Imagine being able to report on it and to say to an auditor, we know 100% of what's on these devices, we know what versions they are, and we're in control. So I am going to talk for a few minutes about Workbrew, because I want you to know that we exist. I want you to know that we're an option. But I really, really want, after this, to have a fruitful discussion in here, a Q&A about the practical realities of putting Homebrew out in your fleet. So while I'm going through the Workbrew talk, if you will be thinking about what it is you want to ask, I'll throw you this mic over here. I'll try not to hit anyone or knock over their coffee, but I can't make any promises. I am a Mac admin and software developer, not an athlete. I'll do my best. So Workbrew is our take on enterprise-ready Homebrew. So having solved these problems before, the ones I've all shared with you in the last few minutes, we are pretty convicted that just like all of you packaging the same software over and over again is a waste of time and duplicative effort, so is all of you trying to manage and install Homebrew all the time. Like, that's not your job. That's not the business you're in. That's not why the company hired you. They hired you to solve higher level problems. So we provide a tool to knock out all the obvious sort of underlying issues with Homebrew. So it gets MDM deployed, just like everything else that you do. Once it gets MDM deployed, it installs an agent on the device which manages Homebrew for you, allows you to enforce policies, allows you to get a lot of analytics and observability. We're going to look in just a minute in more detail at those things. So first of all, it gets deployed via your MDM, and immediately you get a bunch of information about Homebrew in your fleet. If these machines didn't have Homebrew on them, Workbrew would put it there for you. But it's important to know that if you have people using Homebrew today, you can pull a fast one on them. You can install Workbrew, you can adopt their existing Homebrew installation, and they'll still have all the tools they had before, with the critical difference that you will know about them, and you will be able to manage them. You can remotely update them, you can remotely block things, remotely uninstall things, and much of that functionality is actually available for free from Workbrew. So Workbrew has a free plan. It is truly free. There are no device limits, no user limits. We just give it away because we're that convicted that it's a waste of all of your time to be reinventing that wheel. Where we make our money is in higher level sort of policies and automations and things that will make your life easier. But if you never become a customer of ours, I would still encourage you, go try the free plan. It's amazing. And it will wake up the conversation around Homebrew in your company. I think it's often the case that a security exception gets filed, we all move on, we look the other way, and nobody feels great walking away from that conversation every year. Workbrew Free can give you a way to feel a little bit better about that. So you get all this analytics and observability. We tell you about vulnerabilities in your fleet. This is so obvious, such low-hanging fruit. Why did nobody do it? Well, we asked the same question, so we did it. We constantly pull in the CVE database all the time, throughout the day, updates within minutes. If there's something installed in your fleet that has an active CVE open against it, we will let you know. You probably don't have that visibility today. We also can tell you about things like policy violations. So if you have set some policies out in your fleet, you've said we want to forbid these packages, we don't want to allow you to use third-party taps, all those things we talked about earlier, we can alert on that. You get an actual email or Slack notification or Teams message or whatever it is that you use at your company for notifications. We make all of that available to you. You can actually fix the things we alert you about. The remote management stuff, not 100% available in the free plan. Be perfectly upfront and honest about that. There is a cost for us to go out and orchestrate that and manage it for you. So the remote management's incredibly valuable. You can do a bunch of stuff that we have pre-programmed for you, like upgrade things. We give you the easy button to upgrade things. But you also get the opportunity to do stuff that we haven't even dreamed of. If Homebrew can do it, you can do it remotely. And I think that's really, really critical. It's a design philosophy for us. We want to give you access to all those low-level APIs, even when we make things easier at a higher level, because every single person on our team has been in your shoes at some point and realizes that people do weird stuff to their Mac. You are going to need to do some things remotely to clean up after users that we will never anticipate. So you get all of this really both high and low level remote management capability. As I mentioned, you get vulnerability alerting. This is probably my favorite thing that we do. This dashboard is something that can go into your other security tooling. So this dashboard has a full REST API behind it, as does everything else in the product. You can hand that API key to your security team. They can put it in the dashboard they already use to keep up with these things. But you also, right through this interface, do you see the upgrade button over there? You get alerted. You get to do something about the alert. And you get the joy, if you've dealt with all the alerts, of seeing inbox 0 related to vulnerabilities in your fleet. And that, for me personally, I love leaving the office on a Friday and looking at that empty inbox and knowing that there's no work for me to worry about over the weekend. We can give that to you with respect to packaging in your fleet. So that's a brief overview of Workbrew. There's so much more in the product. We do have about 30 minutes, so if you have questions about it, we can just dig in. I can pull it up. We can look at stuff. But I want to encourage you, that URL right there gives you full access to my calendar. You all can book up my week and make me stressed out when I get home next week, which I would be happy to be. And you don't have to book a meeting to me to talk about Workbrew. If you just want to talk about Homebrew in general, I will make time for you. I'm really happy to do that. I really believe in it. As I showed you at the beginning of the talk, I've been contributing to it for years. I'm very passionate about it. So don't think it has to be a sales call if you book a meeting with me. We can just chat. We can talk about the problems you have at your company. If we're a fit, we're a fit. If we're not, I totally get that. All right. So now I want to get into some Q&A. I am, while I do the Q&A, going to throw this up again. So if you didn't get it at the start, you can do that. So who wants to break the ice? Yes. Here, hold on. Okay. Heads up, everyone. I've never done this before. Yes.
Quick question.
Would have been so embarrassing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a way to cache all the package installs so that local, like if you've got a company of 500 people,
Right.
it's not going out for every one of those developers?
Yes. So there is built-in support to Homebrew, and we support it natively in Workbrew as well, to set some environment variables that point to where those packages live. So you can put them in Artifactory, for example, or whatever artifact storage you use internally. We actually just did this at a customer where they already had sort of Homebrew using Artifactory. They'd already done all that work internally. We installed Workbrew on the device, and it just found the configuration and started pulling from Artifactory. It was awesome. It's like, I really thought we were going to have to do some coding or something. It just worked. It was great. So you can do that. we really would like want to get into the why with you about that. Like, what problem are you solving by doing that? At the end of the day, like, GitHub pays the hosting bill for all of these packages, and it's expensive. There's 15,000 things, 3,000 updates a month, like 15 years of history. That's a big storage bill. And you know, you wouldn't have to absorb that on day one, right? You'd absorb like the current versions and then going forward. You're also creating work for either yourself or your Artifactory team to, you know, pull those things in. And usually the why that we hear is security. We want to vet those things. We want to scan them, you know, all of those sort of concerns. Well, we talked earlier about how Homebrew is now signing those packages. And so if you're pulling them through into Artifactory, you lose the ability to do that cryptographic verification of the origin of the package.
My concern was actually more from slamming the network connection from like 20 developers being onboarded on Monday,
Yeah.
and their machines coming online, taking out our link.
that is a possibility for sure. Although GitHub has an excellent edge network, so they have, I think they use CloudFront at the moment. I might be wrong, it might be Fastly still. I was a GitHubber for a long time, but like there's been a bunch of changes since I left, so I'm not sure. But yeah, they do have an excellent edge network. It probably will be good enough for your client sites. We also do counsel people like to do phased rollouts for that reason, like when you're adopting a whole fleet. A new device popping up is easy. 1,000 new devices popping up is a different story, so yeah. All right.
As a fun piece of information, our company has figured out an alternative to management like Workbrew. Our engineering team got annoyed at many of the issues that you brought up, so they created a multi-thousand line shell script they call Bootstrapper that they maintain that automatically pulls and configures the Mac for their development environment. And anytime there's a problem, the solution is to just rerun the Bootstrapper. It takes about 20 minutes, pulls all the software again, reinstalls everything. We're excited about Workbrew because they're the ones managing it. We tried, and we just don't respond quick enough for them. They can go and fix the shell script immediately and then start reinstalling everything again.
Yeah.
So this is a much better method than what we've been using at our
so you know, it's interesting. My first attempt at like fully managing the software on my Mac was this project that I wrote in Chef years ago. It's open source. It's on my GitHub. It's very bit rotted. It definitely does not execute anymore. But I wrote a bunch of Chef policies, and like I was installing this software out of Homebrew, but then I was also going in and like setting plist variables and things. You know, I was like really trying to just new Mac out of the box, run this script. It's my old Mac again, right? Yeah. And it worked for a while. It really, really sucked to maintain. It was like broke every other week. And part of the like discipline of being the person who's writing the automation, because I would also share this with other developers at our company, is like I had to be very disciplined about never installing a package by hand. I had to go like edit the Chef thing, put the package in there, let it run, figure out it was broken, fix whatever broke. Later on at GitHub, we had a thing called Boxin. I don't know if any of you ever encountered that. It was written in Puppet, which is also a challenging thing to manage a Mac with. When it first launched, worked incredibly well, and then over time got more and more complex, and it just got brittle, and it had also sucked. So one of our co-founders at Workbrew is Mike McQuaid, who's also a longtime GitHubber, and he's the project leader of open source Homebrew, which is awesome. We actually pay him most of the time to work on open source Homebrew, which he's happy about, we're happy about, everyone's happy about that. But he built a tool at GitHub called Strap. And Strap is dead simple. It's like 100 lines of bash, and all it does is do all the basic MDM light kind of things. You know, it turns on file vault, it make sure that the machine automatically locks if you walk away from it, like all the very basic stuff that you would want to do. And we would use that. You'd actually plug in your GitHub credentials. It would set all that stuff up. It would install Homebrew, and then it would go look for your dot files on Homebrew. So if you had a repo that was just called dot files, all one word, it would put them in your home directory, and then if there was a setup script in there, it would run it for you. And so that let people like do away with Puppet and Chef and all this stuff and just write Bash, which most of us understand, and it's a lot easier, it's a lot less brittle. We actually have that built into Workbrew now. So we do have some small business customers that have no MDM at all and probably never will. But the developer productivity story around getting all the stuff they need on the device is compelling enough that they're like, okay, we don't have an MDM, but we still want a way to roll this out. So we gave them one. You know, we built that in. It's you go plug in your GitHub credentials, it gives you a shell script, you run it, sets up your new Mac. So what I've seen is that developers, like there's a big trend for configuration as code. I've mentioned it a bunch in the talk today. And then also there's a trend towards automating developer onboarding. And so with Workbrew, so those brew files we looked at, like that declarative list of what I want on the machine, we have a feature built in to Workbrew called default packages that just wraps that thing in Homebrew. You'll notice the theme. A lot of our features are like, let's take this thing in Homebrew and make it work at scale. So you create these default package sets, and you can target them to different parts of the fleet. So you can have stuff that goes on every device. But then you can have stuff that just goes to the engineers or the web developers or the data scientists, or, you know, they all need different stuff. And just last week, we actually launched our own like GitOps configuration as code workflow for those. So there's a GitHub action now that you can plug into your Workbrew instance. And then you can give your developers a Git repo full of brew files, and they can go into those brew files and open pull requests and update their own developer onboarding without ever talking to you. Maybe you want them to ask you to approve the PR, you know, but that's optional. That's up to you. But that is just, for some of our customers, a complete game changer, because we still had IT in the loop a little bit about those default package sets, and now we can take you out of the loop entirely.
You mentioned automating through an MDM that brew upgrade command, which is a great idea.
Yeah.
How disruptive is that, though, for developers if they're actively doing something when that weekly policy hits a river?
Yeah, so it can be disruptive. So our recommendation is, if you're going to do that, that you do it at some time when the developer is very unlikely to be in the middle of their workday. Now, I say that as like a career technology person and a bit of a night owl, so like picking that time is a little challenging, particularly if you're a global or distributed workforce. So using things like smart groups in your MDM to, you know, target time zones, for example, would be a smart thing to do. And then, you know, just generally like picking the weekend. You know, Workbrew and MDMs work very similarly in this regard, that like if the device is offline, like closed, not connected to the internet or whatever over the weekend, that's fine. When it wakes up on Monday morning, it's just going to do all the stuff that you asked it to do.
Okay, and I have one other question. If you deploy Workbrew, will it adopt those home directory installs of Homebrew?
So it will not. We get this question a lot. We're debating optionally doing that. The reason we haven't done it yet is a ton of our early customers are like in highly regulated banking, trading, you know, those industries. They really don't want us digging around in their user's home directory, because there's often stuff in that user's home directory that they consider a trade secret that's very sensitive. So we like being able to look them in the eye and say, yeah, we're not digging around in your home directory. But we've heard the question enough times that we'll likely build something and it'll just be optional. It'll be a thing that you, the admin, can decide to turn on if you want us to start looking for those things. Because there are some patterns to identify them. We can find them. even if we don't end up adding that to the product, we will probably start providing some apps or extension attributes or whatever for the MDM that you use. You know, they all have a little bit different nomenclature, just to help you find them. So a way outside of the product to say, this is where all of our rogue Homebrew installations are. Yeah. Anyone else? There we go.
So I'm thinking of a potential use case. You were talking about being able to point this towards any GitHub URL, correct?
Yeah.
I had a previous employer where I was at where we had a custom Electron app for a phone app that we used.
Yeah.
During this time, like, we were using like a very low level MDM, so we were just pointing this towards the URL for an S3 bucket.
Okay.
And we, like, once a month, I would just go update that app file.
Right.
Would we be able to, in that situation, deploy Homebrew to the fleet, point it towards the GitHub repository, and have it install that app whenever there was an update?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not only can you do it, it's like super easy. If you want to send me a follow-up, like, I would get on a call with you and show you how to do it. It's really cool. So you can have the GitHub repo that app, the source code for that app lives in, right? They've probably already got CI to help build the application. So you can piggyback on that. You can add a Homebrew formula to that same repo in the exact right location, and then it will also become a private tap for that app, and you can just point Homebrew or Workbrew at it, and then it will be available, like, with the name you give it in the Homebrew formula. You can just brew install that thing or brew upgrade that thing.
Okay. Yeah, because it used to be where, like, that team would be like, hey, there's a new version, here's the download link.
Yeah.
Either that or they'd have auto update built into the app.
Right.
And I would take that and throw it into Mosul's PKG creator.
Yeah.
So, perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Who doesn't believe me that it's, like, safe to put Homebrew in your fleet? Is there anyone I didn't convince in the last hour? Okay. I'll take those results. Cool. Any more questions?
Here you go.
Do you have a list of some other big apps like Office or Chrome that we can install via Homebrew without using the mass CLI?
Yes. Zoom, Slack, Teams, it's all there. It's really, really incredible. And it's interesting. So the commercial apps, we didn't get too much into, like, the technical weeds of Homebrew, but those are a thing called a cask in Homebrew. So, you know, Homebrew has a formula and a cask. Formula is, like, generally for open source stuff, and a cask is for, like, vendored software. So, like, when I was talking earlier about Homebrew signing things, Homebrew now signs all the formula, all the open source stuff, because that's the stuff we build from source. The casks, like the stuff that comes from Microsoft or Adobe or Zoom or whoever, the vendors sign those. So those get, like, real, like, Apple code sign, like, you know, developer ID signatures that Gatekeeper on the Mac can validate, right? So anything like that is available as a vendor package is honestly much easier to add to Homebrew than the open source stuff is. Because the open source stuff, you have to, like, figure out how to build it. You have to, like, figure out what dependencies it needs, how to link the libraries that it needs, you know, if it uses auto tools, and then make, and you sort of, you know, you have to figure all that stuff out to add a new open source thing to Homebrew. But with a cask, if you have a URL to the installer, you can actually, at the command line, like, create a new cask and give it the URL. And I'd say 90% of the time, it just works. Like, it just creates a formula for you. You might not like some of the choices it made, and you can go, like, change the names of things and whatever. but it'll just say like, oh, that's a PKG, I know what to do with that, or like that's a DMG, I know what to do with that.
You mean like configure those in our own internal tap, and
So-
it could potentially replace something like auto PKG?
Yeah, but even better than doing it in your own internal tap, just give it to the Homebrew project.
Cool.
Like, if you do it and you've got it working, why do you want to maintain it? If you give it to them, then now you're one of, so I had it on an earlier slide, but just in Homebrew Core, which is one of the Homebrew taps related to formula, in the last 15 years, there have been over 14,000 unique people who have contributed something to Homebrew Core. Just become 14,001. You know, this is the argument for like not reinventing the wheel everywhere. If it's truly an internal tool, yeah, Homebrew doesn't want that. Like they can't get it anyway, right? But if it's like vendored commercial software that you use all the time, someone else needs it too, and Homebrew will accept it. Like their bar for accepting something is like, is there a public URL to download this thing? Because obviously, if you need like to be authenticated somewhere, that's, you know, that doesn't help everyone. And then, you know, is it something that passes all of the CI that is required to say this is safe, like we can update this regularly, and once that bar is cleared, they'll accept it. And you might still be the one who updates it from time to time, but often Brew TestBot will do it for you, and often other members of the community will do it for you.
All right, cool.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you all very much. This has been great. It literally is my first ever PSU and first ever PSU talk, and I really, really appreciate you all being here, especially at 9 a.m. on a Friday. So thank you for sticking around. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the conference, a safe drive or flight or whatever you're doing to get home. And I do hope you will reach out to me. As I mentioned, I have all the time in the world for Mac admins. You don't have to buy anything from me.